So what would you do if a country, without the agreement of anybody else, decides to attack a country and mass murder hundreds of thousands of people?
Right now, that is a real possibility because of the structure of sovereign nations. Right? We have some 193 sovereign nations in the world today, and sovereign, think what the word sovereign means. In practice, it simply means that no government recognizes any real law above itself. Where sovereign means independent, right? Autonomous. We have our own foreign policy. If we want to violate international law, who's going to prevent us from doing it? And so on. Sovereign also means autonomy over internal affairs, right? So if a government is violating the rights of its population, other governments will say, well, it's an internal affair. We can't interfere with that violation of human rights, and so on. And of these 193 sovereign nations, 191 of them are militarized, right? There's only about 2 that don't have military. And so they all have this military precisely because they're sovereign, because there is no law above the nations. And therefore, you don't know who's going to attack you and who's going to threaten you. And people, there's an arms race going on, who can get the most sophisticated weapons and so on. All this is eliminated as soon as you federate. You don't abolish the nations, but you federate them under the sovereign people of the earth. Because the people of earth are the real sovereignty. They're the real source of law. Law needs to be the same for everybody on earth, protecting all human rights everywhere. And the first function in the Constitution, the first function of the World Federation is to prevent war and secure disarmament. There's no need for an army. You know, we're right here in New York State, in the United States, right? New York State does not have an army, because it's part of a federation of 50 states, right, that are within the Constitution of the United States. It's a federation. We're talking about doing that for the world, federating all the nations of the world so that they can live under the rule of law, and none of them will need an army. Police, yes, you know, a civilian police, important, right? They can protect and serve people. Military, it is not necessary in a civilized world.
Who would create the laws and regulation throughout all your structure?
Well, the World Parliament, right, that I described to you before. The 3 houses combined, the House of Councillors, the House of Nations, and the House of Peoples, together that would be about 1,500 people representing every corner of the earth, every religion, every nation, every ethnic group. They would be represented in the World Parliament, and they would, it's a parliamentary system, meaning that the Parliament has the authority, and they would be legislating world law. Now, world law does not mean that the nations in the world, in the Earth Federation, won't have their own governments and may be able to make their own local laws, because that's the nature of a federation. You have levels of government. Right? We're here in Racket Lake, New York. Racket Lake, small town, has its own laws, right? And then the county that we're in has its own laws. And then New York State has its own laws, right? And then the United States has its own laws. So the main functions of the Earth Federation government will be to deal with all those problems that are beyond the scope of nation states.